Good morning, everybody. Let me welcome all of you to this public meeting of PASHE's Board of Governors. For those in the public and for those who will be watching via YouTube or whenever it's posted, I'm not quite sure what the technology of that is, but we welcome you. And again, as Randy said, the line is open. Please remember, everyone, to keep your lines on mute until you want to speak so we can minimize background noise. I don't know how many people are on, Randy. Let me know if you think we want to advise people to use the raise hand feature, or if we think we can just discuss, conversation by people jumping in if we have everyone in gallery view. Sure. I can go either way. If you're on the phone, please push *6 the first time you want to speak to unmute your line. And before we start, two acknowledgements I want to make, actually very related to each other. The first is to very much thank Secretary Pedro Rivera. We're not sure if you're on the line or not, but we want to thank you for your incredible service to the state and to the state system. You've been instrumental, throughout, obviously, but through this pandemic crisis and figuring out closings and reopenings and everything in between. You've been invaluable, and your department has been invaluable. I know you're leaving our board this fall to become president of Thaddeus Stevens College. That is really fantastic. We wish you everything, all the best, and we look forward to honoring you properly at our full board meeting in October. And as I said, related to that, we want to give our sincerest congratulations to Deputy Secretary Noe Ortega, who has been selected by the governor to succeed Pedro as secretary. This is truly thrilling news, Noe. I just can't say enough about how smart and compassionate and knowledgeable and committed you are to students, to all the people of the Commonwealth. We wish you so well in your new role as secretary, and we're just so grateful that we'll be able to continue to work closely with you and benefit from your leadership.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I really do appreciate that.
Great.
And I look forward to
yeah, please say a few words.
I just look forward to working with everyone in this new capacity. It's an opportunity to continue to sort of bring the narrative of public post-secondary and higher education in the role as well. And so that to me is a really great opportunity. And I continue to look forward to be able to engage with folks in this new capacity. So thank you again.
Great, wonderful. We're just, like I said, so glad you're still available and in even a better position to help us. So just for the record, let me just note that the board held a workshop on July 15th and that we will meet briefly in executive session at the end of this meeting. And with that, I will ask Sharisa to do a roll call of the board members.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. All right, Representative Tim Briggs. Governor Audrey Bronson, Governor Nicole Dunlap.
And make sure everyone, your lines might be on mute. So if you're on the phone,
you on mute?
*6 to unmute, and
yeah, we
on the video.
Do the roll call slowly, I guess.
Okay. Governor Alexander Feefo.
Here.
Governor Donald Hauser.
I'm here.
Senator Scott Martin. Designee Terry Trago. Vice Chair David Baser. Governor Marian Moskowitz. Governor Thomas Mueller.
He is on he's having phone problems.
Okay. Secretary Pedro Rivera. Designee Noe Ortega.
Present.
Senator Judith Schwenk,
I'm here.
Chair Cynthia Shapira is here.
I'm here.
Vice Chair Samuel Smith, Secretary Meg Sneed,
And Sam Smith is here.
Sam Smith is here,
It's Meg.
and so is Secretary Sneed, I believe.
Yep, she's here.
Okay. Governor Stephen Washington,
Here.
Governor Neil Weaver, Governor Janet Yeomans,
And,
Dr. Liaison Jamie Phillips.
and David Mazer joined the
Here.
public line.
Okay, thank you. And David Mazer has joined the call.
And I'm going to unmute the public line for a moment since we're having a Zoom YouTube problem. And we'll just double check to make sure we didn't miss any other board members who may have joined the public line. So just 1 second.
This is Brad Roy. I didn't hear my name called, but I'm
My apologies. Representative Brad Roy. Thank you.
here.
Great. And
Cindy, this is Sam. I'm having a little trouble with my Zoom stuff, so I'm on the phone now. That the Zoom side doesn't work, so I'm just gonna be on the phone.
Okay, thanks, Sam.
and Dave Mazer, I heard you. You're on the public line, and Tom Muller, we heard you.
And Tom Muller, yes.
Any other board members that we missed?
We do have a quorum present. Thank you.
And again, I apologize for these technology blips.
Okay, thank you very much. So let us go on to public comment. Are there any members of the general public who want to speak? They actually have been advised to dial into the public comment phone line. So let me now turn to Randy and ask if there is anybody on the line who wishes to speak.
Sure. We'll look to the public comment line. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? At one point, I know Chairman of the Cheney Council Trustees may have dialed in. Chairman Vogel, did you dial in? Okay, if not, does anyone else in the public, general public, wish to speak? All right.
Okay.
Hearing none.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let me ask if any of our statewide union leaders have remarks this morning.
Yes, we do have remarks from Todd Spalding with SCUBA and Jimmy Martin, President.
Yes, sir. I already did it.
All right,
I'm not
so
sure who's on the line there, but yeah, if you could just make sure you're muted. Do we want to call on Jamie? And then we'll get to Todd?
Sure, that would be great. May I start?
Jamie. Please.
Thank you. Chairwoman Shapira, Chancellor Greenstein, governors, university presidents, and guests. As I begin my remarks this morning, I'd like to start by making an observation, and it is an obvious one. I'm not giving these remarks at the Dixon University Center. All of us are in our offices or homes scattered throughout the Commonwealth. This meeting is remote because we are all aware that assembling in person in the boardroom in the Dixon Center would not allow for appropriate physical distancing. As we know, the CDC recommends at least 6 feet of physical distance between oneself and others, and this should be done in concert with other preventive actions such as wearing masks to reduce the spread of COVID-19. While all of us would prefer to be in the same room and to interact with one another face to face, the Board of Governors is not meeting in person because it would not be safe to do so. On the other hand, something very different is beginning to occur on some of the state system campuses. On Monday, face-to-face classes began at Cheney University. Concerns have been raised by some of my colleagues there regarding an inability for students and faculty to appropriately physically distance in some of the classrooms. When these concerns were raised, a member of the administration stated that there are no specific requirements that there must be 6 feet of distance between desks. Rather, the guidelines suggest this should occur, quote, when feasible. This type of statement represents a lack of concern and perhaps even disdain for the students and faculty at one of our nation's oldest HBCUs. This week, students are arriving back to campus at Bloomsburg and Shippensburg universities, and they will be on campus for up to a week before classes begin. Students will begin arriving early next week at Indiana University of Pennsylvania and midweek at Kutztown University. Many believe, and science seems to confirm, that having students return to campuses for in-person or even high-flex classes is unsafe, and the proliferation of COVID-19 cases at other universities is alarming. According to a recent New York Times report, more than 6,600 coronavirus cases have been linked to U.S. campuses, and the fall semester has not yet begun at most of them. In Georgia, the Cherokee County School District began K-12 classes on August 3rd. On August 4th, parents were notified that a student tested positive for COVID-19, and that resulted in 20 students and a teacher being sent into quarantine for 2 weeks. The class is now being taught remotely. By the start of the second week of classes, over 900 students and staff members have been ordered to quarantine, and nearly 60 positive cases have been reported. One important difference between the K-12 schools and colleges and universities is that K-12 students return at the end of every school day to their homes and are under the supervision of parents or guardians. At our universities, this is not the case, as our students do not have supervision of parents or guardians. In a recent op-ed in the Chronicle of Higher Education, Greg Gonsalves, an assistant professor of epidemiology at Yale University, said this: "Dorms are like cruise ships on land or prisons without bars. People living in proximity, in frequent contact over extended periods of time. For many infectious pathogens, such settings are a boon for disease transmission. Colleges are perfect incubators for viral spread and propagation. I feel compelled to continue to articulate the real apprehensions of the members of my union. I want the position and concerns of APSCUF to be very well documented. My members are convinced, as am I, that there will be cases of COVID-19 on some of our campuses, that students, staff, and faculty will become ill, and there will be spread to the communities in which our universities are located. I will close by saying that I hope and pray that I am wrong. I hope that our universities will be able to catch lightning in a bottle and that there will be no cases of COVID-19 on any of our campuses. If that occurs, I will stand before all of you in person or remotely, and I will admit my error, and I will encourage all of you to remind me of it. My real fear, however, is that the students, the staff, and the faculty at Cheney University, because they are the first university to open, will be the canaries in the coal mine, and I hope that they will all emerge healthy and safe. I thank you for your time, and I wish all of you continued good health.
Thank you very much. And now I believe that Todd from SCUPA
Yes.
wants to speak. Thank you, Todd.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Spalding.
Good morning, Chairman Shapiro, Governors, Chancellor Greenstein, and campus presidents. My name is Todd Spalding, and I'm the president-elect for the State College and University Professional Association, better known as SCUPA. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with all of you today. I have some big shoes to fill from my predecessor, Shalita Camarda-Webb, but I hope I'm up to it. As you know, SCUPA employees work in various departments on campus, including but not limited to residence life, admissions, financial aid, career services, student success, health promotion, student activities, and various other areas. SCUPAs are a highly skilled group of individuals who can excel in any position they're needed. As you may know, at some of our universities, students started to return to their campuses this week. They're excited to return to their home away from home, to see their friends, experience campus life as much as possible, and to learn in person again. Along with their excitement is also the tinge of anxiety about whether or not they will be safe and stay healthy while they're away from their home. We also worry about their safety and frankly our own in these troubling times. I want to make it very clear that the employees in our bargaining unit have always faced any adversity that has come our way to protect our students. Our students are not just some young adults that we have to oversee or keep in line over a semester. It is our hope that the students at our universities become members of our extended campus families beyond graduation. We want them to remember their college life warmly after they graduate. After all, we are here for them. On opening day or opening week this year, as the day or days draw to a close, we can see the pride and angst in every parent's eyes. They look at those of us who work in housing, and without a word, their faces are telling us that they're expecting us to keep their children safe, to keep them protected, to keep them healthy, to watch out for them, to guide them outside the classroom and let them express themselves. I speak for myself and many colleagues who work in residence life when I say it is a huge weight on our shoulders, but it is an awesome and rewarding experience to work with our students every day. We will do everything within our power to make sure they succeed. This year will bring many new experiences for our students. Some will be near and dear to their heart after they graduate. Other experiences will be very trying for them and us as well. The members of SCUPA will do everything we can to make sure they enjoy their college experience while they're online or in person at our campuses. We have to reimagine how we do things, how we interact, the programs that we produce, the experiences that we create for our students outside the classrooms and online. I can assure you that SCUPA employees are willing and an able group who will help make this a great year for our students. We will rise to the occasion and help our students excel and exceed. We will just be doing it in a different way this year. SCUPAs are multitaskers, movers and shakers who make things happen for our students, parents, campuses, and communities. At each university has approached the COVID-19 crisis differently. It has become clear that some campuses have clearly risen to the occasion and others could use a little help getting there. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge a university that has done an amazing job, in my opinion. I'm extremely proud to have graduated and now work for Clarion University. Clarion is my home. I'm proud of the way Clarion University, our president, our administrators, employees, and faculty have pulled together to open our campus for the students who wanted to return while taking online courses. The university has done an amazing job trying to prepare our campus to keep everyone as safe as possible. We all know that we cannot be 100% safe. We have to be diligent in our hand washing, wearing masks, and sanitizing our workspaces. I believe that Clarion has done as much as possible. No one can ever prepare for every possibility. I will say that I feel as safe as possible at work. We had over 126 students check into my housing location yesterday alone. I have 4 more days of check-ins this week. Was I nervous? Yes. Did I wash my hands excessively? Absolutely. Do I feel it went as well as possible? Yes. I believe that Clarion University is up to the challenge that our students will succeed this semester. To any parents that are listening who may be preparing to take their student to campus this fall, we will be here for your students no matter what. Your student successes are our successes after all. Be patient with your campus housing staff. We've been through a lot the last few months trying to plan for your students to return. We will do everything within our power to keep your students safe, healthy, and happy. To our wonderful students, we know this semester will be different, and we are here for you to try to make the best one possible. If you need assistance, reach out to us. We are here for you. If you're feeling anxious, depressed, worried, reach out to someone to talk to about it. Knowing when you need help is a sign of becoming an adult, not a sign of weakness. To all my brothers and sisters in SCUPA, thank you for your service to our students and our universities. We see and appreciate your dedication and hard work. To everyone, stay safe and healthy, and I wish all our students and campuses the best of luck this year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, and let me apologize and say once again, thank you, Dr. Spalding. Okay, I believe that Mr. Bogle, who is chair of the Council of Trustees of Cheney University, is on and has asked to speak. Mr. Bogle, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Please go ahead.
No, I don't really have anything I want to say. I'm doing more listening than talking.
Okay, that's terrific. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Then I think that we will move on to our action items today. And our first action item you will find on page 2 of the agenda. It is item 4A, the sexual misconduct policy. And Dan, do you have some remarks that you want to make on this item?
Sorry,
You're on mute, Dan.
Yeah, really just a couple of opening remarks, and I'm going to turn directly to Andy Lehman, with council, and Susie Williams on his team. This is actually an important item for reasons, and they're presented in order which I think makes the most possible sense. The Amherst Relationship policy is something we've been working on now for a while. It's a critical piece of policy infrastructure that we need to have in place. It's been a good process involving all of our stakeholders in developing it, and it comes at a time when it now integrates with a new set of Title IX regulations that are being required of us by the federal government. And so the intersection of these two pieces of work are going to be presented to us. There's been a lot of noise, some smoke, and maybe not a light around not a lot of light around the new Title IX regulations. I want to point out to the board, at the risk of being obvious, these are federal regulations. We are required to follow them. And we will be working over the course of the next several weeks and months to develop implementation practices and processes that align with them. It's important as a board that we understand their implications, that we understand how well positioned we are, in fact, to implement the new regulations. But it's also important to the board to understand what they mean for us and what it means for us in terms of our responsibilities as leaders of this institution. So Andy Lehman's going to take it from here with his colleague Susie Williamson. And I look forward to their presentation and the discussion.
Thank you, Chancellor. Good morning, governors, president, public. Randy, just a point of order before we begin, and that is, I know we were having problems with the public line, and I'd be remiss as counsel if I didn't ask, are we posting online the public numbers so that individuals can call in and participate?
Yeah, the public line has been posted on the board agenda and in the sunshine notice that went out last
week. Thank you. Terrific, thank you. I know Governor Smith would be disappointed if I didn't raise that question. First of all, I thank Chancellor Greenstein for the opportunity, and my colleague Susie Williamson and I to come here and sort of overview where we are on this process. On approximately May 19th of this year, the United States Department of Education issued their final rule. These are federal regulations that we had known were coming for some time, related to changes in the interpretation of Title IX and its application to sexual misconduct on college campuses and in K-12. I'll focus on college campuses. Prior to this, since at least 2011 in prior administrations, we had been following Dear Colleagues letters. They did not necessarily have the force of law, but they certainly showed us what the department's interpretation was related to guidance surrounded on Title IX actions on our college campuses. Now, as some of us recall, Title IX covers equity and opportunity. We often think of it in terms of athletics. In recent years, we've been focused quite frankly, a lot on the sexual misconduct on our college campuses. And that's what this is about. What we have before the board today, and I'm just going to review it quickly and turn to my colleague to offer any other commentary and answer any questions that all of you may have. This furthers our commitment to maintaining a safer environment and a workplace and educational experience free of sexual misconduct and sexual harassment. The purpose of this policy is really what I alluded to a few minutes ago, and that is codifying what we've already done. We are going to codify the things that we've done consistent with the Dear Colleague letters that haven't changed. We're going to codify the practices that we've adopted. Since 2011, obviously the courts have intervened in what they believed was a shift from a process leaning in favor of complainants to maybe a little bit more in center. And we have adapted the universities, the presidents, and their colleagues on the campuses have done a tremendous job in being nimble and adopting and reacting to where the courts have come on these matters. The policy itself is really broken down into 7 bullets. And the first one essentially is requiring each university to have a Title IX coordinator on its campus. And that's something we already do. The second and third are really about the notice requirements that prominently displaying the information for resources for our students and our campus communities. The third bullet, again, echoes the fact how we have to disseminate that. These are sort of the hows and the whats of the policy. And number 4 talks about the university adopting a policy for resolving sexual misconduct complaints in a prompt and equitable manner. Again, this is a process focus. These are now pieces that we're required to adopt, which I'm happy to say are not changes for the university. These are things that your universities have been doing in the last decade. A big component of this, and Susie will address this, is the training element that we are continuing to have responsibilities. We are partnering with another system for their resources and training. And Susie can talk about that. But 6 and 7, I think, are the pieces that I think might be most interesting to this board. And that is the Chancellor publishing a template policy for resolving sexual misconduct cases. And in a vacuum, that just may seem like run-of-the-mill good stuff, something we should do. But it's also really appropriate when we look at a system that's looking to be more of a sharing system, a system that's looking to have resources with greater efficiency and better economies of scale. I've been in meetings with some of your presidents who have voiced this concern and have seized this opportunity without us even mentioning it. And I know Vice Chancellor Minnick is certainly happy to see an opportunity for us to share services to the extent that we are working with common definitions and common processes. There's work to be done on that, and I'm happy to turn to my colleague for that. And finally, number 7, that is the Chancellor in consultation with the presidents, and that is with consultation with the with student leaders, with the applicable bargaining units and other campus community members. That essentially what we're saying here, we have work to do, but this is what we need to do to protect the rights of employees while recognizing and continuing to protect the complainants in these cases. So essentially, the new regulations, or final rule, if you will, address the rights of employees for 6 violations, 6 regulatory violations of sexual misconduct, of which we have to follow the Title IX processes. And we are committed to working with our unions and working with our campuses to do that. And we're asking that the board put that in the policy, that it's a procedure and standard, so that as we move through this process, if we need to have some nimbleness and we need to make changes that reflect the state of the law or best practice, that we can do that. I know campuses across the country, not only in this Commonwealth, are working on this diligently as we speak. And if I hadn't mentioned, tomorrow is the effective date of the new final rule, August 14th, 2020. And I'll turn over to Susie to fill in some of those holes.
Yes, thanks, Andy. So I want to commend the Title IX coordinators and the conduct offices on each of the campuses. They have devoted a considerable amount of time to working through these issues and been very cooperative. And we've really made some tremendous work in terms of the template policy and aligning on some best practices. And the goal is to continue that work so that we can refine those best practices. We can leverage the training materials that we have access to through our cooperation with another system, and then build upon those to account for and address individual institutional cultures and issues for those particular campuses. So the template policy, most of the universities have started implementing that into their code of conduct, and they intend to post that by August 14th. Our next focus is on basically aligning the training for those individuals that are going to need to start handling these cases and make sure that that is in place for those pieces. This is not to say that we've never done training. Certainly we have, but we want to align our new training practices with the obligations under the regulations in terms of consistency, making sure that we have those trainings posted online as required under the regulations, and basically be transparent about our training process and include the larger university community in that.
Chancellor, with that, I would turn it back over to you to answer, for us to answer any questions that members of the board may have.
Thank you both. Cindy? Question?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to also open it up if there are any questions about this. Okay, Dan, did you have anything else that you want to say before we bring it to a vote?
Nope.
Okay, is there a motion then that the Board of Governors approves the sexual misconduct policy that is effective August 14th, 2020? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Thank you very much. The motion carries. Dan, would you please introduce item 4B, the Amherst Relationship Policy, which is on page 5 of the agenda?
Yeah, I am just going to turn it directly back over to colleagues Lehman and Williamson, as the two are intimately related, no pun intended.
Thank you, Chancellor, Madam Chair. Again, we have been working on this policy for quite some time, and I want to thank Dr. Driscoll and the Commission of Presidents, who he was so kind to have some volunteer colleagues work with my office in developing this policy. It was an opportunity for us to lean on the experiences of the presidents, as well as their views from not only the presidencies, but the other positions that they've held in academia in their ascent to where they are today. We also certainly had scanned the landscape across the United States related to these types of policies and trying to find a policy that makes the most sense for the environment that we're in. I think one of the biggest takeaways on a policy like this is this provides for the equitable and consistent treatment of employees, volunteers, and officials, as well, and maybe more importantly, for students, whether you're at California University of Pennsylvania or East Stroudsburg University of Pennsylvania. The same rules at a minimum apply. This policy is a floor. It allows the university campuses to supersede that in relationship to having greater restrictions. But it is, for all intents and purposes, a personnel policy. We have, solicited the input from colleagues in their collective bargaining units, and I'm very grateful for that. As usual, said some great comments and points of clarity that sometimes when you're working on these documents, we don't quite recognize. Essentially, what we're doing in a policy such as this is and I will just direct you to the point of the policy, C on page 8 of the materials, I believe, Amherst Relationships with Students. We're essentially prohibiting Amherst relationships with students where the employee, volunteer, or official has supervisory, instructional, or professional responsibilities concerning the student. In essence, they have some control over the course of that student's life at the institution, whether it's employment, whether it's grades, whether it's in another form or fashion. We're broad enough that we're trying to capture those. And we're putting everyone on notice the type of conduct that is or is not acceptable, as well as the disclosure requirements. You will note at the beginning of the policy, we also reference the conflict of interest, because oftentimes cases such as this create conflicts of interest. They create conflicts of interest between and among employees, or between and among students, their peers in the class, or with individuals who have oversight over that student. I'll yield to my colleague, Susie Williamson, to fill in any of the major points related to this policy.
So this policy does align with the Title IX policy in terms of the structure with respect to employees. So as Andy had indicated, under the Title IX policy, only those 6 regulatory violations where employees are accused of violating them would go through the Title IX procedures. This policy really interplays and aligns with that piece of it. And as Andy indicated, it is a personnel policy, not necessarily a Title IX policy. And
I will also just look to Dr. Driscoll to see if there's any points that he thinks are appropriate that either Susie or I may have missed and may be important to his colleagues or the board.
Thank you, Andy. I would just mention that 4 colleagues took a lead role in working with legal counsel to develop this policy, which we all as president support. So I thank President Hawkinson, Pearson, Carter, and Hannah for their additional detail work here. So thank you for that. I would highlight, again, the connection also with other laws and requirements related to minors, and those are separate and distinct and further above this. So this does not get in the way of those key issues and responsibilities we have for dealing with minors. It's a complex set of circumstances, and this is a very good policy in my experience. I would just add that we've done a nice job walking to get to this, which will be very, very helpful going forward in a number of circumstances. So unless there are questions, thanks, Andy, for the opportunity to comment, and it was a good working relationship. Thanks.
Sure. Madam Chair?
Thank you very much. Very much appreciate that presentation. Dan, did you have anything to add, or shall I go to a vote?
I think right to a vote.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there a motion that the Board of Governors approves the Amherst Relationships policy effective August 14th, 2020?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
Cindy, this is Sam Smith.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to comment. I wanted to thank those that were involved in development of this policy, because if you've read it and thought through it, everybody can look and say, well, what about this situation or what about that situation? It's almost impossible to write something like this that covers every conceivable situation that may arise to which this policy, or even the previous one for that matter, could apply. So I just want to kind of make it clear that we don't believe that this solves every little problem out there, but it certainly is as good an effort as you can put together that, as Andy says, tries to kind of create a floor so that if this individual university wants to go further, they have that option. But I think it's a really good, sound job of kind of balancing all of those individual what ifs this and what about that, and what if this occurred, what if all those things it's endless. So I just wanted to make that comment, one, to thank them, and two, to say that we don't believe that this will fit every situation, but it does as good a job as you can do, and as in terms of our own due diligence and in terms of just good faith effort, this is as good as it gets.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that very much. I think that's a really good, really important point to make. And it's true with lots of policies, and that was definitely kept in mind when this one was written. So I agree with you. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to call for a vote then. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 4C, which I believe starts on page 11 of your packet. Let me ask Sharon to walk us through item 4C regarding the disposition of Dixon University Center property.
Thank you. And the background that I'm going to begin with is for both item 4C and 4D for the disposition of both properties. The process is dictated by Act 188, which requires authorization from the General Assembly for university and system-owned property. That language requires consideration within 30 continuous calendar days of the session days. And so it also specifies how that 30 days is calculated, and if no action is taken, then the request will become effective. Our normal procedure that we follow has been to obtain Council of Trustees and the Board of Governors approval prior to seeking General Assembly approval, and so that's what's before you. Our disposition process also requires that we follow the procurement code, And for the properties that we're talking about, I would recommend, given the nature of the properties, that for these we would conduct an RFP to hire a broker to sell the properties. So I'm going to turn first to the disposition of the Dixon University Center, which houses the Office of the Chancellor and the several organizations within the Shared Service Center. It's located here on North 2nd Street in Harrisburg. The details of the property are in the board approval. It was purchased in 1992 and has functioned as an educational consortium since about 1956. And it was the home of the Harrisburg Academy prior to the system ownership. So we have been here since 1992, and it is a well-maintained property. It's on 6.4 acres with 6 buildings and 135,000 square feet, including the parking garage. The Dixon University Center exceeds the space needs of the Office of the Chancellor, and it's largely underutilized. So disposition of the sale would reduce the overhead costs for the Office of the Chancellor, allowing savings to be reinvested into system redesign initiatives as well as universities and student efforts. We have been working with those universities who are continuing to offer some courses over this academic year that has been greatly reduced with the pandemic. In light of the potential approval from the board. And so we are working with those universities. There are 5 that currently have a variety of classes here. And we're talking with them about that transition if this approval goes forward. With that, I will turn it back and see if there are any other questions.
Okay. Before I offer it as a motion and any further discussion, I just want to thank the Chancellor and his team, Sharon especially, for the work on this. I believe that this connects us deeply with the intention of system redesign. And I appreciate, as one who started thinking about this and actually began to launch an effort to review what it might mean in terms of cost benefit to have a disposition of Dixon and locate into smaller quarters. This is sort of part of the, I would say this goes back to our intention to do a top to bottom process and not hold anything sacred. And agree that everything that is assumed would be challenged. For me, this was something that struck me not long after I came onto the board and became board chair. So we know that there's a lot of tradition involved with Dixon Center, that it has had a symbolic meaning. So I think the symbolism, and the actual cost benefits, because we are looking for savings everywhere we can find savings, are both important. It is not about buildings. Our mission is not about buildings. Our mission is not about physical assets. Our mission is about providing leadership, establishing the outcomes that we want for this system, for our universities, and more importantly for our students, and to do everything within our means to ensure that we have resources available to accomplish that mission. And I think that that's why this whole discussion has some symbolic value in addition to the actual substantive value. So it really sort of goes along with, in a sense, where we are with redesign now, making major advances on shared services, securing far-reaching legislative reform, perhaps the most far-reaching since the system was born, in the ability to really search for answers in our redesign. You know, as we know, it really has, it's incredible how everything seems to come together, but with the pandemic, it's really sort of exacerbated the whole scope, the whole scope and the whole thrust of redesign. And also, interestingly, this idea of overcapacity, right? We can't use Dixon Center right now. And will there be a paradigm shift in work, right, that continues in the future that has been started by this pandemic? And what does that mean about buildings and physical assets? So, you know, with all that being said, but being mindful, of course, you know, of the tradition, and I have to say the beauty of the building. It's a beautiful campus, and I certainly have enjoyed being in there. But there are more important things that we're focused on right now. And so I just want to sort of remind everybody that there is an important symbolic as well as substantive piece to this discussion. I would like to put the motion, have somebody put the motion on the table, and then there can be further discussion. So may I have a motion that the board approves the Office of the Chancellor's request to proceed with the disposition of the property known as the Dixon University Center through lease or sale?
So moved.
Second?
So moved. Second.
Second.
Thank you. And is there any further discussion or other questions for Sharon or for Dan?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Please.
Okay. Ms. Sharon, I did have a question. We have some universities that offer classes at the Dixon Center. We're looking into different alternatives for those classes. What are some options that the system is looking at for those universities?
Sharon or Dan, would you like to address that question?
I can. Go ahead, Sharon.
I was gonna say we're working with the universities in terms of other space. If they wanted to still maintain a Harrisburg presence, there are other partnerships and space options within the Harrisburg vicinity that they can utilize. So we're working on that option. And then also for those that may not need a space, if they want to do some sort of mixed online hybrid learning, how they want to transition that. Lock Haven is the one that has the most space considerations given the nature of the programs there. And so we have to have active conversations on alternatives for their space because of the types of academic programs that they offer. But we want to make sure that we do that as part of the transition and use this fiscal year to work with them to find those alternative space locations if they still want to maintain that presence in the Harrisburg region.
Now, will these different locations across Harrisburg, are these through partnerships that we already hold, or will universities be required to pay, or how will these spaces be funded?
We do not have the partnerships yet, so we would be looking to those partnerships. The universities, while they currently do not pay for the space, they pay in the sense that the Dixon University Center is funded through a portion of the appropriation that goes out to all the universities. So when the budget gets approved in the April time or in the July timeframe, post appropriation approval, there is a component called System Initiatives and Off the Top, which is the Dixon University Center. So all 14 pay because those funds are not then distributed out to the 14. So in essence, there is a cost that all universities bear for the space. Not all of them use it in the same way. 5 use it for course delivery. The others do not, but they still can use the space for meetings and things like that. So there is a cost to the universities, whether it's directly for a classroom cost or as we're talking kind of the off the top that they all pay.
Understood. So there'll be no, possibly no direct cost coming out of each university for these specific new alternative spaces in Harrisburg once the agreement.
So those are the things we have to work through and figure out kind of what are their needs, where they can, and how do we address that so it's hopefully cost neutral for them.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one. Do we have an idea of where we'll be moving the office of the chancellor? Are we going to go to a property that we already own, or are we thinking about renting out a property near or in Harrisburg?
We do not own any other properties in the Harrisburg area. We lease one other space that is also beyond the needs of the individuals who occupy that space. That's a longer term lease than our current, so we have that potential. We're also trying to get out of that lease space, to be quite honest, and drive down those costs. Once we know kind of the timing of the potential sale of the property, we're looking at reducing our actual physical footprint and becoming more of a flex space environment. So individuals, we can have compressed kind of office space where individuals can float in and out rather than having offices and cubicles that they occupy all the time. So that'll reduce our footprint greatly. We have groups of shared services that are looking to be completely remote. And so we want to go through and determine what is the total space that we actually need for what period of time, and then figure out what kind of lease costs we would need for that space. But it will be much, much less than the current space that we're in. And if we have, if we can't get out of the other lease, we would, have that as our fallback plan.
Okay.
Hi, this is Brad Roy.
Yes, yes, Representative Roy.
I think we should do this. Our system, what helps our students, it's the professors, it's the learning that takes place. Extra office space we don't need isn't really accomplishing anything. So I fully support this. I think it's a good idea. A few blocks away, the governor's mansion sits there empty. The governor doesn't stay there. Passy could temporarily move into the governor's mansion. The state already owns it, or some other location, but this is definitely a good idea. And I think a benefit that we might not have thought of is if we purposely had a new headquarters where there is not a big conference room, and get these board meetings out at the campuses. I thoroughly enjoyed being at Kutztown about a year ago for the board meeting. That got all the board meetings at one of the campuses. We got to talk to people we normally wouldn't talk to. We got to see the campus. We got to talk to people who normally don't go to the meetings. If we're on the road for our board meetings, every quarter go to a different campus. Even right now, we should be meeting in person. We could use a gymnasium and sit 20 feet apart from each other if we had to, rather than trying to do this with all the technological glitches by trying to do this online. But I think we absolutely should pass this, and we should absolutely start having in-person meetings again using social distancing in gymnasiums at the different universities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. Appreciate your comments. Are there other comments?
Madam Chair, I heard that the next Secretary of Education was going to give us like a half a floor in his building.
Oh, what a great rumor.
Sorry, no.
Sam, the meeting's being recorded. Come on.
When they see that it was me that said it, they won't take it seriously.
I heard the Secretary of Education was looking at buying our property.
That was a personal investment, and I think I offered $1. I'm not sure how far that's going to go.
All right, well, we can all right, we'll continue that discussion offline and come back to the board with final offers from NOE. Are there any other points of or questions or further discussion? Okay, I think the motion actually has been placed, so I'll call for the vote. It's been placed and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. The motion carries. Next, I'm going to ask Sharon to walk us through item 4D regarding the disposition of the Perico property. And I think that starts on page 16 of your agenda.
Thank you. Yes, very similar. This is a request to sell from Edinboro University. The property is located outside the Erie city limits. It was a gift in 1986. It's 26.3 acres with about 11 buildings, and the building square footage totals about 40,000 square feet. About 10 acres of the site's developed with buildings, and the balance is open green space and orchards. The university has considerable excess space, and this property is adding to their overall operating costs. Based on the space guidelines that the system has, they currently have in excess of about 180,000 assignable square feet of E&G space. So as part of the university's strategic plans, they were looking to divest this property to help reduce their costs, as some of the prior conversations in driving down space costs so that we can reinvest in students. They concluded operations at the site at the end of spring 2020. So at the end of the spring semester, their operations there concluded. And the trustees for the university have voted to approve the sale of the property on July 24th of this year. So this is being brought forward to the board after the trustee approval, for your approval prior to going to the General Assembly.
Okay, thank you. Let me put let's get the motion on the table, and then we'll see if there are any questions or discussion. Is there a motion that may I have a motion that the board approves Edinboro University's request to proceed with the disposition of the property at 2151 West 38th Street, Mill Creek Township, and that any resulting proceeds will remain with the university? May I have that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Representative Roy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion or questions? Okay, then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Thank you. Are any opposed? All right, thank you very much. The motion carries. I think before I call for new business, I'd like to call on Senator Judy Schwenk. I believe, Senator Schwenk, you wanted to address the board.
I do, and thank you, Chairwoman Shapira. I'm not sure, for those of you that are outside the legislative body, you're aware of all the news media resources that have popped up in regards to what's going on in state government. But there is I think, a relatively good outlet called Spotlight PA. And Spotlight PA puts out investigative reporting. And most recently, they did an in-depth report. In fact, this is dated August 6th. And the title of the report is Condemn, Discuss, Repeat. And it's an article about the PASHE system and students' experiences in terms of their race and how they are treated, not just by students, but also the university, faculty, staff, whatever it may be. And no, it's a very good article. Their discussion, students were interviewed at numerous universities, and there were some good points too about how students at Cheney feel, very much like they're in an inclusive environment, and at ESU that their process to working through some of the issues that they face is working really well. And I know my colleagues, the legislators that I represent in the Democratic Senate Caucus are aware of this article. And there's concern, that how are we addressing this? So I felt that I needed to bring this up to the entire Board of Governors. I know that Dr. Pearson is now on board, and so grateful that you are there. But I think as a board, we may want to think about what our response to this will be, not to defend ourselves, but to see how we make ourselves better. how we change that experience. None of this is new. You know, Kutztown University is in my district, and I've heard these reports, everything from there's no place for me to get a haircut to I don't feel like I'm part of the, you know, the community here. And so I think we have a responsibility to discuss this and address this. And knowing my fellow members on the Board of Governors, I think you probably will share my concerns about it. So I wanted you to be aware of it for those of you that hadn't seen it, and maybe start a discussion about it. Maybe it's something, I know the Chancellor certainly and is aware of it, and the administration. So I put that out there and hope that we will be responsive, not so much to Spotlight, but to our students that we serve.
Thank you very much, Senator Schwenk. You're absolutely right. We all share the concern. The article was distributed out to the board members, and you know, it's top of mind. It is, as you say, I know Dan can speak to this even more than I can, but we've heard similar kinds of, you know, comments and pleas, really, you know, to do better. And I think that by understanding that equity is a sine qua non if we are redesigning for the good of our students and for the Commonwealth. That is, we cannot redesign without equity at the top of our agenda. We're failing the Commonwealth, and we're not going to do that. And I think it's only a first step to acknowledge it, to say that it is intrinsically interlinked with redesign, and to immediately move forward to get leadership that can help us do that. And that is why we sought to bring on board Dr. Denise Pearson. So, you know, obviously that's not the answer, but we are acknowledging and trying to move in that direction. And, you know, Dr. Pearson, I do not mean to put you on the spot whatsoever. This was not on the agenda. You're not required to say anything, but you know, if you would like to just, you know, jump in with a few words.
And I apologize for that too. I apologize, Dr. Pearson, but this was my opportunity to bring this up, and I felt it would be more appropriate in a conversation necessarily than a letter.
Sure. No problem at all, and thank you very much. So tomorrow will be 10 days that I've been on the job.
Right.
And I've learned quite a bit. And one of the things that I've learned is no surprise to anyone that's in this meeting is that bringing on someone to champion equity, diversity, and inclusion said a lot about leadership. And to have you, Senator Schwenk, you know, make such a public statement, it's more than just symbolic. Everything starts with leadership. So I want to thank you personally. It will make my job that much easier. I've spent the past 2 weeks talking to university presidents and their cabinets, and there are a lot of great things happening across the system. And this is just a great time to elevate it. I've been, you know, quoting Chairwoman Shapiro's statement, you know, about equity, diversity, inclusion has to be center with this system redesign that we're doing. So as much as that article hurt me, it gives me hope when I hear conversations like this one going on. And, you know, I tend to see the glass half full. And I think if we all come together as a leadership and we are firm in what we should be focusing on in our relative positions, I think that we can accomplish a lot. And that does not minimize the pain that those students were, talking about in that article. And I do plan on, in very short period of time, I've already started the process to get together with student leaders, not just student government presidents, but leaders across different student organizations, and to start a conversation. And also to build, this is the last thing that I will say, build a public presence for the role of diversity, equity, and inclusion at the system level. So I invite any of you to reach out to me at any time. I don't have all the answers, but I think if we link arms, we can figure it out in a relatively short period of time.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the fact that you recognize that we're bringing this forward, and that's important. But I also want my fellow board members to understand it's not like, well, cross that off my list. I talked about it and we're done with it. That's not enough. That's not enough for us. We really have to be responsive as a board too. And maybe Chairwoman Shapiro, maybe this is something that is when we talk about system redesign on regular board meetings, that we add this to the agenda. That it's not just about how we're going to work together on things like student information sharing, but that the diversity and equity issues are part of our agenda on a regular basis. That's one way, but I think there'll be other ways and things that we think of. But I really, and I've known this for a long time. As I said, this article didn't bring up anything new, but we really have to take it on as a Board of Governors too.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we agree. Holding ourselves accountable by including it on agendas once, and particularly when we get to the point where we can create metrics and understand what the goals are that we're actually working toward. I totally agree with you. I mean, I want to acknowledge that I believe our presidents care deeply about this, and there are some excellent initiatives that are happening, but this is a heavy lift for everybody because it's just very difficult, and there are so many aspects to it, and we just need to put our best effort forward. So thank you, appreciate that.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I just do want to give the student side of things, because Senator Swank, thank you very much for bringing up that point. I really do believe, being on the student level and talking with the different student government presidents to get a whole feel of the whole state and how our students are feeling, this is something that is near and dear to all students' hearts. It's a different time. It's a different time, and I really do believe, this is to the board that we do need to acknowledge that there are problems, and we are not perfect. But we are taking steps to do this. We're bringing on Dr. Pearson, and she's going to do phenomenal work. And is already doing stuff in the first 10 days here. But our students also are going to be looking for us to do something because it is important to the students. And the students realize that this is heavy lifting. They are willing to put in the work that it takes. And I really do believe that we should be there to support them in this effort. So I think that the board really should put this at the forefront with the multiple different things that we need to accomplish. But as long as the students feel as though they are supported and we are there to do so, I feel like this is going to be very, very important. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much, Mr. Washington.
Cindy, may I just quickly, one comment?
Sure.
Just one comment, and this is a great discussion, and thank you, Senator, for bringing it up, and thank you, Denise, for being here. When we talk about this, I want to be clear. We're talking about issues of race. We're talking about issues of race and tolerance and racial justice. So we need to get comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. We need to call that out. The one thing that, I mean, Denise has only been here, I guess, 10 days, 10 days tomorrow. And she's already put together a deck that she shared with us and our leadership team. And one of the slides, she's beginning to define her role. She has a lovely slide which talks about anchoring diversity, equity, and inclusion for the system office by engaging in broad conversation as a cabinet within my leadership team, et cetera. And I remember from my work in another place, that to make progress in this area, which is, we're looking at 400 years of racial intolerance and injustice. So progress is slow. To make that progress, we're going to have to become comfortable having really uncomfortable conversations and very openly. So I don't want to lose the point. That article was about race. And our mission really is about addressing issues of race and race.
Yeah, we have to use the right words. We have to use the real words. Thank you, Dan.
And Dan knew I would have to chime in on this.
I did that for you.
First of all, I want to applaud Dan for taking the action of hiring Dr. Pearson. Dan and I have had many, many conversations about race across the system since my arrival and his arrival. And it is a challenge. It is a challenge that we have to address head on. It is a challenge that our students deserve we respond to. I have had conversations with Deputy Secretary Ortega about this issue, and I'm very concerned about it. The lack of discussion about this issue across the board is not acceptable. It is not okay to not have conversations when we know that there are students who are really not feeling as though they have a sense of belonging on some of our campuses. And it is not because there is not work being done. I want to applaud my colleague presidents on the work that is being done. The work is simply not deep enough. There hasn't been enough support for it, and it is not across the board. So Senator Schwenk, thank you for bringing this issue to the fore. And I encourage you to take it on with a great deal of enthusiasm because our students deserve no less. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate that discussion. Is there any new business to come before the board? Okay. Hearing none, thank you all very much. The public meeting is adjourned, and let me ask everyone but board members to please log off the Zoom so that we can have a brief executive session. Thank you very much, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you in October, if not sooner.